I should have ran out and got that drink of water before I had to start looking at those maps. All right. Yes. That's very nice of you, Nancy. Too bad I'm not a big-time NFL football coach. You can hold this up and get thousands and millions of dollars from sponsors. Anyway, the first items I want to go through, which is what I sent Nancy last week, are the changes that we made starting on page 7 at last month's meeting. We went through the policies and we truncated down to the verbs, and the changes are in red. And as you go through those, and instead of the we or whatever, Harris County, and encourage development, support creation, that sort of thing. And if you see anything else, as you're reading through that, just by all means let me know. And then, of course, the one at the end, that we spent some time on, Advance Harris County's broadband system. Develop partnerships to enhance countywide broadband services by and not limited to developing public and or private partnerships. I'm pretty sure we all got that right. Y'all were kind enough to repeat it 2 or 3 times, he and I. So, if there's anything else you see, like I said, if you just don't have anything to do one night and you're reading through, by all means, jot down what you see wrong, make a comment, and let me know. We really didn't touch anything else until we got to the historic preservation. Linda was kind enough to write up things that have changed in Harris County since.
What page?
That's page 26. And it's in red as well. The original survey was done in 1994. And everything in red is, we went off of Linda's notes and what has changed. Unfortunately, we lost 1, 2, 3, 4. We lost 4 houses. I'm assuming they just deteriorated or torn down. Is that the case, Linda?
No, actually, the 4 that are on that eligible list are all on the National Register except for the Cleveland, Godwin, Nelson house.
Oh, okay.
And
So they're still there?
There are 2 that are gone and 2 that are on the National Register. The Wrightmore house is also gone.
Okay, let's see. Are you getting that out? All right. So Wrightmore house is gone. Which other one's gone?
The Cleveland, Godwin, Nelson house is the
Okay.
first one.
We lost 2 houses.
We lost 2. And then 2 were put on the National Register, so they're no longer eligible, they're actually listed.
Okay, which 2 were put on the National Register?
The Thornton Plantation and the Copeland Plantation.
Oh, that's great. Did you do those?
Yes.
Yay!
And on the next page, the Jones Crossroads store is also on the National Register, which is when it's crossed out there.
When you say next page, 27?
Yeah.
First one. First one, Jones Crossroads store. That's right, because you did. I remember you doing that one. All right.
There's something else.
Let me ask you this, because I don't have a clue. Why'd you do those to put on the National Register? Because they qualify, or they?
Well, they were qualified, but someone asked you to do it.
Oh, okay. So, I don't know if there's anything, they're all unique houses, is that the case? All right.
Well, they're all on, so, yes, you have to do.
Okay. Are we picking on the Episcopalians? I see Episcopal got crossed out.
It's just the name, the National Register name for that church doesn't include the word Episcopal.
Yeah, it's a flop.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see. And we have 84 remaining eligible National Register individual property.
No.
Out of 84?
Yeah, I think it's just now reads out the remaining.
Okay.
84 comes out.
Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't even see the striking. Okay.
Is it the whole 84, or is it just the number 8 replaced by?
No, it's the whole 84.
Okay.
Rick, do you know if there's a data set or something, or some sort of data set somewhere that locates these properties physically within the county? Is there some kind of table or something that says, here's what these are?
The only thing that I have is the maps that were produced in '94. Now, the survey was done by Burke Walker, so we could possibly be able to get the information from him. It just depends, you know, since it was done in '94, it depends on what technology he used at the time. So the best I have is just a paper map to go by right now.
I'm not sure if it's adding anything to the actual plan itself, but I know sometimes for decision making, these proximity to development or some other activities, you have a name, but unless you're that familiar with the area, you may not know that that's down the street or up the road across the street. That's just a reference other than a tabular form like this. But I don't know if you have time or the interest to do that.
Well, I think in one of the meetings I said it would be good to have a map. And I thought we had a base map. That would be the paper map.
I can contact them and see what we use.
Okay. Because it would be good to have a map along with the text.
It just depends, like I said, it depends on what technology you used to get the GPS coordinates, or they are done by UTM coordinates. So.
I know there's a lot more things to do. I just wondered maybe that's something if you have time to do, that might be a nice way to reinforce the text within this.
That's already Allison's task.
Now, I
Sorry,
have not checked the Georgia National and Historic Resources GIS system to see if this survey is in there and if those points are in there. We cannot get those layers because I've tried to for CDBG projects and they won't let us do that. However, they are, that database is publicly available for anybody to be able to look at. The only thing it does not list are archaeological resources.
I would think at a minimum, I can't remember what the base map looks like. But, you know, if there's a home on Slocum Road that's on the National Register and meets eligibility requirements, then somehow we should hopefully be able to figure out within, I don't know, within a couple hundred yards of where that home is. Just to, you know, just to have some sort of map in there. Maybe at minimum, we just copy we could copy the map you have and put it in there. You know, as a fail-safe, but it would be nice to get that digitized. So, and maybe somebody's already done it. So that would be good. And that's basically everything we covered the last time. one of the things we did at the meeting last week, we went through each character area, and we were running out of time, so we only went through, they look at the land, that starts on 29. We only went through for conservation, recreation character area, the land uses or zoning categories preferred, and then listed any kind of zoning category that we felt was appropriate for that character area description, and for the conservation recreation, it's agricultural, those are the sort of land uses we like to see in those areas, and of course that allows, some residential as well. We did that, we went through and character area by character area, and nobody suggested, any changes. We had the maps there, albeit they weren't up, they were all on the table. But we had the future development map, we had the existing land use map, and we had the draft zoning map, which is the far one on the left that we sat down with Brian and went through all of his aerial photos and did the best we
Were
could.
we going to add Pine Mountain Valley to the rural village?
We are,
Okay,
we are.
I'm too many pages ahead.
No, that's fine, I just haven't added that. Text-wise, I haven't been able to catch up with some of the comments. But let's talk about Pine Mountain Valley. And last time Linda asked me, well, how would you define, the perimeters of these rural areas, the rural village category. And what I came up with, I can't remember it word for word, it was only 2 sentences. But it's a unincorporated area, in a rural area. It has a historic component to it, in most cases. Residential, and after talking with Linda and others, we add commercial, because all of your rural village areas, Catala, Ellerslie, and Pine Mountain Valley all have a commercial component to it. And so I think with that definition, we're very comfortable, with delineating those areas. If you look at the future development map, and the only one, there's a small one in the packet that you have. I was really proud of myself, because the one we did in 2014, I pretty much covered. There's a loop that has a lot of older homes on it. I can't remember the name of the loop, but I covered that area, and then went on down to the old commercial buildings right on 27, and I came directly across over to a church. And actually, as you're coming down 27, Catala has a sign that says Catala Unincorporated. I figured that's got to be as good as anything, as far as to where to define that area. So all in all, I think we're pretty well set with the way it's defined, and it goes all the way down. Thinking it goes all the way down to Billy's. But Linda suggested that we should include Billy's. How do you do anything without? It is called Billy's, right?
Yeah.
Okay. As well as the old school, which is right across the road, and
Yeah.
has a lot of historic value. So I think I pretty much have that area covered. I am a little bit worried. I did go outside the loop a little bit, and I might catch some of the.
So you didn't go all the way to Covert Lake?
No, we didn't go all the way to, did you say Cocoa Lake? Is
I've
that?
been here my whole life. If I thought about Catawba, I thought just about to the county line, at least to that farm right there before Cocoa Lake existed.
That's a long stretch. I'm not quite sure the,
Rural village.
Yeah.
yeah,
I
FEMA,
know,
the
that's what-
definition meets that, but
Knowing what true Catawba is, and knowing what a rural village is, as you define it. Well,
Yeah,
North
yeah.
Pine Mountain Valley in my mind, because to me, Pine Mountain Valley goes from Trammell Mill Road to almost to Hamilton, with the core being right there.
And I think we're just talking about the core for the village.
And the Catawba would go, in my mind, from just about Granite Road to Cocoa Lake.
yeah, that old barn is nice. That's very nice. But, you know, trying to keep it, you know, within a certain parameter. Yeah, that's why they're more concise. Let me talk about what I did do for Pine Mountain Valley. And I'll just have to read it to you here again. I haven't made, what we discussed last time and what I mentioned, I haven't been able to catch up with the text changes. But I'm trying to finish all that up this week. So anyway, this would be, I'm assuming where the post office is. So I basically did the borders, and I'm not going to get all of this in, from the post office, the ball fields, of course, I'm right. It's just one of those days. I bet you this one doesn't do much better, but anyway. The post office, the ball fields, Roosevelt Church. I'm hoping that has some historic meaning. The commercial facility, let me see, there's post office, and there's some vacant residential areas in there.
Dollar General,
Dollar General's in there?
Yeah.
right there,
Yeah.
right across from the post office, just about, across the block.
I didn't show up on Dollar General. And there's some older housing in there. By older, I'm thinking, I don't know, Allison, 40s, 50s, maybe even earlier, some big older homes. So we had the commercial, we have the residential, and then we have the historic component. And so it's going to be pretty concise. One of the things I'm thinking about, oh God. There was another unique quality in here that I made sure to capture, and I just can't remember what that unique quality is.
Chicken plant.
Well, I left that one out. I think, you know, I
The
just,
barn that's rotting down.
well, that does have historic quality. Oh, the other component that I was thinking of, the area normally has areas where you can infill. And all of these districts that I just described have areas where you can infill into existing structures. And like I said, I tried to combine that with some of the older housing and, you know, not things that have been built in the 70s and 80s and even the 60s. I really didn't like the 60s. So, but anyway, so that's how I'll define that, and I've got to get it on the map. Ellerslie, I really think I can truncate that a lot. And because I captured a lot of the subdivisions, I think some of those started in the 70s in this purple area. I'm not quite sure I want to capture all of that. What I thought about doing is the depot, which Allison worked on. The depot, the new park, cemetery,
What part?
and also down in Pine Mountain Valley, I think there's a cemetery in here as well.
Old church.
Depot Park, the cemetery, and here again, the fire station.
The two churches on the hill. Well,
Yes.
Bethesda's not on the hill anymore, but
And the
the
two
Methodist
churches.
church is on the hill. And then Bethesda used to be right next to it, but it's now behind the
And there's a little commercial as you head down.
Right down the one road.
Yeah.
Used to be an Asian restaurant, didn't it?
No,
Yeah.
one, yeah, going the other way.
Yeah.
It was the best Chinese in Ellerslie.
Yeah,
That's what
Oh,
the
did
sign
they?
said anyway.
well, the sign was blown away during the tornado.
All right, and then the two churches, are two churches on the same side or is one on
They're on
one?
the same side.
Okay, all right. So, and that'll be the definition, and there again, you know, that allows for a mix of, let me go back here and read it.
Methodist church is historic. Bethesda, the historic church burned, and they have a brand new church. But still in that same boat.
Well, I really like it because I'm Methodist. And you know, when we're talking about these areas, and we mixed it, and so really, you know, it's pretty easy to come up with a definition. We just covered it, A1 RR, R1 low density, and then C3 neighborhood commercial, and C4 highway commercial for those areas. So, you know, that gives you that good mix that, I don't know, even a couple hundred years ago, that something that would be classified as a village would have that mix of, minus the Dollar General, just called Mr. Smith's Hardware or something. So anyway, but that covers it. And we went through each one, and we found some places where we talked about what kind of land use or zoning should be allowed in those areas. And some of them I just said, like along the bike trail, I just had C adjacent zoning categories. But I'm a little paranoid, you know, maybe a lot. And here again, and I brought this up, and this is a true case, I'm not making it up. There was a rail line with a railroad yard that was abandoned somewhere here in Georgia. They were talking about this case at Gaza, which is the Georgia Association of Zoning Administrators. And the rail yard was 5 acres or so. Well, because it was CSX or whichever rail provider at the time, they never thought when they did their zoning map of putting a zoning layer on it. And so, you know, the property goes up for sale. It's not as bad if it's just the line and the right of way, but I still think we need to lay something on it. A guy comes in and buys it, and he asks him, says, well, what's it zoned? They go, well, we don't have zoning on it. And they had no specifics as to how you handle that. So he just went ahead and put on it what he wanted, because it doesn't say what he can or can't do. So he just went ahead and did. And whatever it was, the residents weren't real happy about it. And, you know, it's one of those that ended up going to court. And the judge said, oh, well, you know, you didn't have a zoning class on it. And I'm not quite sure if he remanded it back and let him do something or not. But so, and like I said, when I think about the linear trail, I'm not quite sure you could get, if something were to happen and CSX gave up whatever interest they had in it, the county gave up their interest, whatever they had in it. I don't think you could do anything, but it's easy enough just to take and lay an agricultural layer over that, you know, on any map and even on your zoning map, to just kind of cover that. And if it ever came to a piece along that way that constituted 2 or 3 acres, then maybe you look at doing something else. But
Well, if we're gonna pave part of it this year,
Okay.
wouldn't you want, I'm just thinking long term, wouldn't you want recreational on there?
Yes.
Because it's gonna be hiking, biking, we're gonna get a couple of miles done anyway.
You could have existing and you have future that's identified. It's
Yeah.
in your document.
But that's not a zoning classification.
No,
How do you tie
I
it to
just,
the-
character of the area, I just,
And that would help, obviously. And I can tell you this, it's no hurt of also, you know, recommending the agricultural, the A1, to go along with recreational, because a lot of your A1, that's what they put in there anyway, you know, more sensitive areas is recreational type facilities. But the bottom line is you'd have to change your zoning map and add that into your zoning ordinance. But this gives you, the recreational probably alone allows you to do that, saying, hey, look, we really just want to do recreational, and the only zoning we have right now that'll sort of cover that is A1. And then if you take the next step and do that, you're fine. So, but that's something you might want to talk to your attorney about, Mr. Todd, and all of those fine folks. And then there was one other place, and I can't remember where that is, where I didn't have a zoning classification. It might have been in the other with the public use, you know, like all the things that you own, which come in under that category. You know, they've either been used a long time as a public facility, or, and they're probably going to continue, but you know, that changes with schools and other things. And looking at the zoning map, I did check some when I was going through over at Brian's office. It looked like even your schools, you know, and your facilities have a zoning category on it, agricultural or something like that. Just so at some point in time, if y'all wanted to sell a lot, or you wanted to sell, you're tearing down an old county building, you know, you have the zoning on it, and you can change the zoning on it, you can do whatever, but it's not unzoned, it's not unprotected. So that basically covers it, and as you get the chance, just go down through each one of the future development categories, because, you know, we had a lengthy discussion Thursday about, I know some of the comments about should we cut up some more of the agricultural with the various, you know, development category, you know, but based on your zoning map, you know, it looks pretty much right. And as far as the acreages that are allowed, and that's, because here again I was talking to Brian, rural residential, rural development requires 2, the ag requires 2. So there's no benefit of maybe having a little bit more rural residential up in the ag area. And they can certainly always rezone to a category of rural residential, or however you classify it. But we, you know, one of the comments, and we had that at length, one of the things, those that live below 315, and I couldn't remember the specifics, but Linda did, thank God. I have her mind when she's 70-something, I'm 70-something. I'm sorry, 58. But, you know, the people below 315 were worried about just, you know, wall-to-wall subdivision. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but, and so, you know, that brought up the discussion again of how to break it up. And, you know, at the end of the day, everybody was just leave it alone. You know, those that were at the meeting. Now, one of the things I did bring up, because, you know, the timeline for your plan is just 5 years. And then you'll be going through some sort of process similar to this again in 5 years. And I got thinking about, I just can't figure out exactly how to do it. They didn't want to do it. I did bring the idea up. I thought I'd bring it to y'all as well. You know, we have the temporary conservation easements down through there, and I look back at that map. And I thought, well, you know, those really function as a placeholder for agricultural land, farmland, et cetera. And yes, somebody brought up that, you know, well, God just sold one, you know, there's development. Okay, well, that's part of the, you pay the penalty and you go ahead and get it. But I thought, well, maybe we could overlay a hatch mark or whatever that, you know, not only on the RR, on the parcels that are under 315, overlay a hatch mark that says this is temporary conservation easement on these properties. And somebody said, well, you're just giving those individuals a false sense of security in a way. That's not exactly how they said it. And I said, well, I don't think everybody under 315 is going to be selling within the next 5 years. And so, you know, maybe it's not a bad idea just to highlight those parcels some way over that agricultural layer. That didn't go too well, I mean, just because it's temporary.
I like the idea actually because people complain about losing the rural nature. And I think if they saw an overlay that said, well, here are lands, acreages that people have put in conservation, their goals, of course, may change tomorrow with deaths and whatever, but these people intend for this land to stay undeveloped.
I agree.
And that may show that even in that very dense part of the county, what we think of as the very dense part of the county, there's still that rural field, those rural spots.
I can go through and.
I mean, I'd like to see what that overlay would
Would
look
look
like.
like.
I mean, it may not be enough to ease people's mind, but it might be.
Yeah, and that's easily, like I said, that I can just add that crosshatch, let those crosshatches over it, or we'll pick
What
something.
do y'all think?
There might be another advantage. If we were able to track it and keep it current, to see if how those conservation plans may be converting into something else, and see what the trend is, to see whether or not, yes, we are maintaining that level, or we're losing it. And it's not part of the whole aggregate. We've taken it out as a subset, so we have more data to deal with, and as managers, make a more informed decision as, is it really happening, or isn't it? Because as we look at it right now, it's very difficult to discriminate those smaller parcels from the whole area. So that could be another advantage, again, if you have it, if you're tracking it, and keeping it current.
And, you know, and I can do that, and, you know, whatever decision at some point in time needs to be made, obviously will be made.
I think it just gives you a visual.
Pardon?
I think it just gives you a visual.
It will.
I mean, you can tell me that there are 20 sets of 20 lots that are in conservation, but what does that mean? Where are they? And if I could just see it visually, that might.
It might make you feel a little bit easier if you live down in those areas, and the thing
Or
is,
if
they're
we're-
there. It's not like they're not there. It's not like they're getting added.
And if we're dealing with zoning changes and people make that argument, then we can say, well, look at this, it's not really like you think it is.
Yes.
It feels like it is because you're in the middle of a subdivision, but if you look overall, it's not really like you perceive it.
It makes a good visualization.
Yeah.
Now, present it, you understand a very difficult concept.
And you know, and I can do that, and the other places, you know, you know, it can even be used. Okay, well, if doing it in its totality under there, for some reason didn't feel too good. You know, it's okay. Well, how many of those parcels are connected to the? I keep wanting to say Maple Creek. I live off Maple Creek, Mulberry Creek. You know, so that for at least some period of time, I'll give that some additional protection. That sort of thing, sort of try to, Flat Shoulders Creek, which I used to fish and hunt off of that all the time. how many of those are attached to Flat Shoals Creek? And I, that sort of thing, but I was just really more or less worried about under the 315, because, nobody really mentioned anything about the 2/3 and that worry of wall-to-wall subdivision. So that's, and I'll do that and overlay it, and what I can actually have that done probably by the first of next week, and I can scan it, email it to Nancy, and she can send it all out to you. And everybody that's here.
And after we look at it, we may say, don't show everybody that, because developers will be keyed in on that line, that land, so, there's just two.
Well, it's, and it's just, but it gives you something to look at and something to make a decision on. But like I said, the whole purpose was, I kept thinking, well, maybe this will let individuals know that, that there is a modicum, I don't know, maybe I should say scintilla of protection there for a certain period of time, as long as somebody doesn't sell it. And I think they said a couple pieces that have that have sold. But, like Linda doesn't want to sell hers to anybody that, other than maybe a couple houses, wants to develop her farm.
We get letters all the time.
So, I'm sure there's more people than Linda like that, but we'll do that.
If you're done with this section, I'd like to go back. I kind of skimmed over 29 and 30. I'd like to bring up some points.
Go ahead.
Okay, if you go to page 29, if you go to the top of the vision, and about a third of the way down to the benefits of preserving and conserving these properties. So in the vision, we talk about preservation and conservation. My favorite topic.
Right.
So if you go down to the third bold line, quality community objectives for this area, it says open space preservation and environmental protection. I'd like to make a suggestion, pen and ink, that's open space, conservation, preservation, and environmental protection. So it covers what's in the vision. And then the preceding paragraph, where you have conserve on 2, 3, and D, scratch those out, because you've already said in the heading what it's going to be. So quality community objectives for the area is open space, conservation, preservation, and environmental protection. So matches what you have in your vision.
Okay.
Unless that will read wrong to someone else.
I don't see Allison marking anything.
Well, the reason why is because the quality community objectives were a list of, is it 10 now? 10 to 12 things that came up that the Georgia Department of Community Affairs came up with, and that's why that language is there, because it comes straight from what they have.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big problem changing it though. What is it now? If you would.
Well, if you said in the beginning of the quality objectives, you're already saying it. So are we not saying we're conserve or preserve these areas? Just to conserve, maintain, promote natural, historic, and cultural resources. Do you conserve natural and cultural resources, or do you preserve them?
So you just want me to pick whether I'm conserving or preserving?
He wants you to do both.
I would suggest doing both, and that gives you some flexibility by putting it up at the top. That's just what I'm suggesting. But if it's a state requirement, and that's the way they're dictating it to be written, then I guess
I just think it's the way they worded it. I mean, I don't know, they probably hadn't thought about conservation and preservation, I would think, to that degree that
Not to hammer
you have, or I have. Which ones did you say to take out?
2, 3, and 3D. Those start with conserve. Because,
And 3D.
yeah, because I don't understand 2. Well, 2 would be preserve, maintain, and promote natural cultural rather than conserve. So, do you have any idea? You said the state, that's what the state is putting
No,
in.
these things were, the ones you're talking about right here, I think is the wording that we came up with. It was just those two, the open space preservation and environmental protection. That was the state wording.
That's the state heading.
Uh-huh. So
I'll
what,
just-
so
yeah, I'll
what
just-
you're saying under implementation measures and strategies, that was wording that we came up with.
Okay.
So, you said on number 2, change conserve to preserve.
Well, no, I'm saying we haven't covered those. Anyway, with one exception in the back, and I'll get to that, and that's protect farmland. That's the only quote I see that has nothing to do with protection. Everything is conservation, everything else is sort of establishing, developing, promoting. I don't want to dwell on this because we have more important issues, but I just want to look at that a bit.
Okay.
And the big thing, though, is agriculture, vision, and Nancy, will you help me on this? Vision, and then come down to the,
Where are you now?
on
The
my
next
next page,
Okay.
agriculture, page 30, point 4, maintain appropriate size lots. Any residential subdivision development should be done on 5+ acre tracts. Didn't we just say 2 acre tracts?
Yeah, I would have to change that to match the 2.
That's for residential, that's for R1 uses,
Yes, agriculture.
but you can do 5-acre tracts.
We can, but I thought I heard on the previous, in the other section, talking about 2 acre lots in agriculture.
So that would be a minimum.
That's the minimum.
So I could put that in as 2 acres minimum.
Well, I just want to make sure we're consistent. What we're putting in here matches our zoning ordinances and we've been using for
But,
planning.
but if you want to rezone and a piece of property, it has to be at least 5 acres, and I think that's what they're saying here.
Right.
It's not that the individual lots have to be 5 acres, but that you have to have at least 5 acres.
Well, there's some confusion. It says any residential subdivision development should be done on 5+ acres. So I guess I'm
You're reading it,
too broadly.
no, too specifically. You're looking at it as requiring,
Subdivision development has to be 5 acres.
Okay.
not
In
a
total.
house lot, but a subdivision development has to have at
Okay,
least
thank
5
you.
acres.
So that was just a clarification.
Allison, are you suggesting we add in total? Any residential subdivision development in total should be done on 5+ acre tracts. Does that help? Does that not help?
No.
I don't know.
I don't
Leave
think
that.
that helps.
Okay. I just want to make sure we didn't have an error violation or something. Thank you.
And that, looking at the zoning map, I want to make sure we've covered just about everything with, I was thinking about up here where Linda's place is, and, of course, all that has the resort label on it. And I thought, well, where does something like that fall in under? But the way we have it is, where the existing development is, we just have it as single-family residential, because that's basically what it is, isn't it? It's just single-family residential. It's not mixed use. It's not anything along those lines. And then, we have a little bit more.
Yeah, but on the backwaters.
Yeah, on the backwaters, and they had a big discussion about, and here again, that's going to end up being a zoning matter. We have everything on the backwaters as established residential, which is the single-family residential, and of course on the zoning map it's resort. But I know y'all are trying to rectify the resort situation, as you work on your new ordinance and things like that. I know there's been some hiccups with resort years ago. Things transpiring with that, but you have you have some planned unit developments, and you have the PRD, which is the planned residential development. I mean, you actually, you have more density options than what you would think, or higher density options, based on those things. The PUD, and I don't know, maybe you can remember, does that Does that allow for a mix of commercial and residential?
I don't know.
Okay. Nancy says.
PRD is primarily residential, PMD is primarily manufacturing, and the PC is primarily commercial, but it allows the other uses.
Okay. And you know, you have, like I said, you have a lot of that, and more so than what you would think, in an effort to try to provide that and have for people to have access. You know, which is a really good thing. I didn't know. I'm trying to think. Let me see the PUD. I'm trying to. Well, there's one outside of Hamilton.
Right, not shallow.
And I think we have Mountain Shadows as,
Residential.
yeah, showing that as residential. And see, that's something, if they could do, isn't there a hotel at the front of that where you go
To
in?
the side of it,
Is that part of that? Okay,
yeah, residential and the hotels at first.
okay. I mean, I was wondering if, to kind of reconcile the future development map and the zoning map, you don't necessarily have to if that's something we could, that we just mark as, I mean, I think that's it right there. Yeah.
I think you were supposed to have commercial along 27,
Uh-huh.
but that didn't come to pass.
Okay.
They were church and
Okay. Do you think, well, it doesn't function as a mixed use, so probably residential would be appropriate, but if we wanted to change that category, you know, to the mixed use, we just use the same thing that we use for growth.
it's not good for that.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking about the classification.
Yeah, the road is CUPD.
Okay, all right. So you think it's probably just best to leave that, don't match the zoning up with it, just leave it as residential, single family.
That's what it is now for the church.
Okay. All right. We'll just do that, just leave it like it is. See if there are any other places. But that would be, you know, if we wanted to cut it up anymore or change it. But here again, even within the agricultural, you know, it's primarily single-family development. I have gone back through one of the things they suggested, and let me, at the meeting the other night, I'll just let you look at these. I had Laura blow these up. These are the intersections at, I'll give them to the Madam Chairwoman, they're three different ones. They're the intersections at Goat Rock and State Route 219. There's a couple of commercial stuff there. There's church, cemetery. There's the intersection right up the road at Old River Road and Cannon Road. And then the last one is where Pat's Backwater and everything else is. And you can see that's all zoned and used commercial. We don't necessarily, and it's hard to see, but we don't necessarily show that. But, you know, they suggest that wherever we have the traffic counts, and obviously, given where there's other commercial already there, those are pretty good areas to define. And so what I would end up doing is I would have Laura do an inset, and we would have a circle area here, circle area here, and of course you got that metal fabrication plan here. And then when you get up here, the pads and everything, I would just insert or ring, here we use the blue ring, just commercial nodal development. And it would be generalized, but in blowing that up, I did realize, you know, one side of it where I did like a north loop, like right here, you know, you got a church, a cemetery. I don't think that's changing anytime soon, so that's why I didn't go like this. This is a house on it, right there. And I thought, well, you know, that's a good intersection for commercial right there, so. And then, of course, you have the metal place here, that's industrial, that's on there as industrial, listed in the future development map. But they suggested that I just circle those areas and any other intersection that have good traffic counts and put the nodal commercial on it. And so, and I think that's a good idea. Lets us all know where, because then when you go through the rezoning process, not that you couldn't do residential, but it automatically lights up and says these are areas we think are appropriate for commercial development or industrial development or what have you, without having them being listed with 2 or 3 other uses. So, and I was trying to check. I'm also going to do that the nodal here in right here in Catawba. I was going to do a commercial because you come in there, you got the stores here, and it allows for commercial in the village area. But I want to try to identify that a little bit more. And either with the blue, and of course we have the blue ring here, which is commercial nodal, and Ellerslie, which covers all the commercial areas there. Comes back down towards the interchange, or not the interchange, past where 315 comes in, down 85. And any others, you know, that we might have. Unfortunately, we don't have the intersection of 103 and 18. You know, Troup County sort of has that luxury right there. But that would be a good one to mark. Of course, we have the intersections, you know, all going down the interstate for great places. And, you know, and I need to put a note on here that just like we did with the buffers, you know, that these ringed areas, it doesn't necessarily automatically denote, you know, whatever's going to happen got in between this point and that point, the edge of the ring. That it's a generalized boundary. So you could go out beside that, you know, to a certain degree. And your zoning map, well, here again, I mean, we could go in there and mark each parcel, but I just don't know if we want to do that. You know, I said, yeah, every parcel in here is for commercial nodal. So I think the generalization with a good analysis of why, you know, in the zoning report would suffice, not having this piece lit up as red, this piece lit up as red, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, that's something to chew on, but I think we're all right with that.
Is there, this is for the rest of the group, I keep thinking of Catawba, because you're at the intersection of 315, and yet if you come down 315, going back down towards Billy's, and then you go to the next intersection almost down to Longacre, you almost have a whole strip of development starting here, at least there's spots down there, so it's not as concentrated maybe as Ellerslie or wherever they call it, it's kind of spread down that corridor. And right across from Cocoa Way, outside Cocoa Way, you have the gas station, you have Pies and Thighs, you have a small commercial area there. One more over.
Daycare.
Go,
Yeah.
One more over.
Go west.
You want to get to
You see where that shield symbol is for the highway?
Yes.
Right for about, just a little bit below that.
So in other words, we should probably, it wouldn't be nodal, but if it's there, it probably needs to be listed on here as some sort of commercial.
Because I know west or east of the railroad tracks, we've had some development in that area. There's the small stores, the
There's 2 restaurants and 2 gas stations, daycare.
there used to be the photography place, across the railroad tracks is the
Printer, you got
There's a
sand and
gravel
gravel,
yeah.
Okay.
It
restaurant.
really is a commercial area.
And then you go further down, there's the venue event in that storage area, just below the post office, and you have the post office.
Yeah, and then it's real tall. That's why I say Catawba all
Yeah,
the way.
so is it Rehoboth or is it Catawba?
It's Catawba. There is no Rehoboth except cemetery.
On the maps it shows, but there is no zip code for Rehoboth.
So basically then just identify the commercial properties down through here.
I don't want to mess the map up, I'm just bringing this as a.
Oh, no,
as a
you're not messing that, I think we should,
I think it should be.
yeah, I think it should be. Now,
We're talking about growth, and that seems to be either one going up to Ellerslie or to, up to Catawba and Hamilton, seems to be where you're getting a major movement.
well, there's a lot of traffic there, I'm sure. Those that live in that area, like, very good.
Is it East Bon Acre or West Bon Acre?
It changes, it's both. West Bon Acre goes west on 27, and East Bon Acre goes east.
And I'm trying to think about going up 85 to Waverly Hall, there's not much. There's not much in there, of course there is.
Right outside Waverly Hall, you have
Yeah,
a place,
there's
a
a
tire
conven-
place, a restaurant, a service station,
Yeah,
outside city limits. So there may be some more commercial coming on down there. Then you got the sand and gravel place that we rezoned last week, right in there also.
okay. You know, it's, the whole notion of strip commercial and how do you know, that's why we get so much nodal. I just, from traffic standpoint, I just think all that functions better and works better, because there's normally some sort of light there where it's a four-way stop. It's, you know, it's, for whatever reason, I don't mind picking like on a major thoroughfare with good traffic, if the end point of a commercial facility, and then coming back down to where there are other commercial facilities, and marking that as a commercial area and appropriate for other businesses to fill in. But it's, you know, it's always best if it's at some intersection, because it's, you know, focus on that intersection just a little bit easier to manage from a traffic standpoint. And I think DOT is addressing a lot of that. The problem with the strip commercial is the points of ingress and egress. And if everybody gets a curb cut, as the traffic increases and you got people on the right and left coming out of numerous curb cuts, especially as you get older, it just becomes a little bit taxing. And I'll give you a great example. Now, this isn't Lafayette Parkway, but Lafayette Parkway and LaGrange. We begged those people to do some frontage roads along there to help control points of ingress and egress. And what the state did was, you know, they did everybody's curb cuts, and then they did the chicken lane. You know, so you got, everybody's got a curb cut along that whole corridor, except for the stuff that's been done the last 15 years. And you got a chicken lane. And look, it was fine when I first moved there, because you could go out there about 10 o'clock at night, lay down in the middle of it, nobody would hit you. There weren't any cars on it. Now there are plenty of cars out there. And let me tell you, pulling out of Waffle House, any time of the day for the most part, especially during the daylight hours into the early evening, and trying to get, instead of going east, go west, that's tough. I mean, I've almost had 3 or 4 wrecks there myself, and scared, like going, oh God, I just missed that guy, or they just missed me. And so, you know, that's the only problem I have with strip commercial, is the ingress, you know, the access to it. But most businesses obviously want, just like you want your own driveway and road frontage, they want that point. But if there's any way you can connect them, that's always a good idea. I mean, I've seen them do that. Columbus successfully, we did it in LaGrange. We actually asked some of the businesses, could you just connect your parking lot? And 3 businesses connected to parking lot, and you just ride through their parking lots, go down to the light and come on out. They were willing to do that. They could have looked at us and said, and they didn't. So that was nice. And some of them did. But, all right. We'll identify that, and then, you know, anything along 85. And I know going along 315 there are spots as well.
But we don't want that on our future land use plan.
Yeah.
You don't want to encourage that, I guess is what I'm thinking.
You mean the
Just thoughts
identification
here.
of the?
No, just thoughts here and there.
Yeah, I know, I think if we're getting a concentration, a density, I think that's fine. But yeah, if there's one here or one there, then no, I agree if y'all agree, so. But, and I think what we're talking about on 27 is that concentration. So anyway, and like I said, we'll get those changes needed. And you know, I got to notice, I think they're just too small. You know, where you have the commercial map shows it, but we're not showing the commercial in here on the existing land use map. I think it's just so small you can't see it, but I'll have to check on that as well. All right, let me move on. One of the things, had a meeting scheduled with Randy and I was going to sit down with a lot of the utility directors, and we were going to go through the community work program. And of course, that happened. They were going to do it the day after the tornado, and obviously, y'all were real busy. They were real busy, and I'm sure they're still real busy. But one of the things I just wanted to ask you all and anybody here, I mean, we do have a carryover from the last work program of projects listed into the new community work program. And that's basically off the report of accomplishments. If it's currently underway, we have to carry it through the new work program. I'll give you, working with state agencies to expand work capacity to meet service demands, population growth. And y'all, are continually trying to figure out a way to do that, and you talk with the agencies all the time. So that gets carried over into the new work program.
It's on page around 45.
Yeah, I'm sorry, on page 45. But one of the things that just in a free flow, jazz sort of way, we talk about the next 5 years, because I know each and every one of y'all have a good idea of what hopefully will happen over the next 5 years, project-wise. And I just wanted y'all to, we had the broadband stuff, and that can go in your community work program, because I think, y'all are going to be big on that. And along that line, we put the section in about the broadband and the map. Allison was telling me, if you, and it's in the state regs, if you want to apply for the broadband ready, you have to adopt a broadband ordinance.
They have a model ordinance that
Who's
you
that?
have to adopt. It's developed by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, the Georgia Technology Authority.
Georgia Tech,
And
Georgia Tech.
someone else.
Some of those. She's a bulldog fan.
Those two were the ones I remember
Okay.
specifically. But that's what it's looking like right now, is that you have to adopt this ordinance, and it's in regard, it talks a lot about your permitting process, and not discriminating on the type of company that's applying to.
That's only if you want to apply for.
That's only if you want to apply for grants, and if you want to be designated a broadband ready community. But that's something that you probably need to look at.
You sending us?
Yes.
So,
It'd be easier if I sent you the link.
Whatever.
so I would like to add the broadband project. I'm just going to make a note. What else? I mean, y'all obviously plan ahead on projects and things you'd like to see in the next 5 years. I'm taking any suggestions. You go through and see what we've carried over. for water, expand water capacity, subdivision review fees, that's things you look at on a normal basis. Develop abandoned rail line, y'all are doing that. Consider developing sidewalk ordinance, that provide sidewalks when a new subdivision. And, I think those are really important, especially around schools and things of that nature, although a lot of kids get bused. But, I would think.
We don't have any subdivisions around schools.
Okay. All right. It might be nice to have maybe a couple, and the kids walk to school, that kind of thing. Yeah.
You don't want to cross the 30.
We've got the airport improvements, economic development, we basically took, and I've got to thin that list, and then we took everything from the old one and carried it over. And some of these, I'm gonna have to take out. They're just not specific enough. You could say continue to work with Harris County Chamber of Commerce to promote tourism, and although that's an actionable item, we have to do the wording to make that an actionable item by saying, like, we're gonna nominate Commissioner Andrews to be the Chamber of Commerce liaison.
Well, we actually got work on that one by turning over to them all of the hotel motel tax from the state park. The chamber, for them to go to the state park.
Yeah, the grad certification, and that obviously can have an ending date. Everything's got to have a beginning date and or an ending date. And everything else listed in here is right out of the chamber report, and a lot of that, and I was telling Randy, that's a lot, might want to get that down. I would say in each category, like your top 5, if you have that many, and if not, your top 2 or 3 that you're going to try, you're really going to try to work on the next 5 years, and that's how we would have to prioritize that. And housing, looking at updating the subdivision regs, and you do that all the time anyway, or we all try to. And it all depends on how much time we have on our hands to be able to do that. Continue to implement code enforcement program. They're not going to continue. That could be anything from an educational component. Make sure Brian and the staff, go to the conferences that are available as far as the updates on code and things like that. And, that's easy enough to morph that statement into that. And I'm sure y'all, have some sort of fund set aside to make sure somebody's going, to the whatever conferences they need to go to make sure they have their certifications or what have you. But that's something, like I said, I can sit down with Randy's and others and get really, to get that specific stuff. Any other projects that you all know just pop right in your head? Like, we're gonna pave such and such road this year. Or next year, we're going to, anything like that. We're going to add a new wing to the library facility, or anything that's tangible and has a beginning date and an ending date.
Weren't we supposed to do a zoning update after the comprehensive plan? I don't see anything in this. It's not part of it, that's not part of this plan.
Well, that can be an action item.
Because it shows an activity here, change plan PUD ordinance to make easier to understand administration. Under land use,
Yeah, I mean, if y'all are gonna visit updating your zoning ordinance, then we can put that into the land use. That's an actionable item and put a year on it. Okay. All right. Anything else that y'all have?
Randy just said he's gonna send you some information.
Okay.
There are splash projects that will have some of that.
Ah,
like
thank you, thank you.
Redoing the old library for county offices.
All right.
Stuff
Thank
like
you.
that.
We're just going to, Rick and I and the staff are going to meet, well, we're going to meet last, the 5th.
Yeah.
Randy came, we were busy with that, but we're going to meet on April 3rd at, in the staff go over and see what kind of projects on the staff level everybody's kind of interested in doing in the next 5 years and bring those kind of ideas forward. Along with the SPLOST program for the next 6 years that begins April 1st.
Yeah, that's good timing. Okay.
It's-
All right.
It's pretty much anything that you may want to get a grant for.
That's exactly right.
You want to have a budget. If it's something you do on a regular basis, it can be possible, but they really want, like Rick was saying, things that are quantifiable. So,
But that's all that I have. I do want to, John gave me, and John, I'm going to let you'll explain this better. Actually, Esri, which we participate in,
do you want to pass it to the members up front here?
Yeah.
It's just an example. I've been talking about agriculture and how we're looking at the lands as one representation, and there is a national database out there. This is an example of habitat. I couldn't get the agriculture, where there's a national map looking at soils and saying what's good for agriculture, what's better, what's the best, and also a category for local agriculture. So it could help us with a standard database, and this is used throughout the country. It's an Esri-based database. It's available. It's fairly coarse, but it might help us in looking at some of these properties here, particularly in the future for development. And it already exists. It's just a matter of importing it, bringing it down, and making it fit within our county. And I got that just specifically for Harris County, and that one has to do with habitats and habitat fragmentation. So we're talking about green space, natural resources protection. That kind of shows you where in our county, based on their national inventory, where the best areas are. So it's up to the locals to decide what are you going to do with this information. So it might be something, if we have the time, if it doesn't take from the other things we're working on, this comp plan, possibly put in there, put it later in.
It would be good information for the planning commission and the commissioners to have when you're looking at rezoning.
And it might help when you were saying earlier, Susan, about the conservation easements we have, even though they may be temporary on those forest easements. Well, if they're already in this ag plan, and this is some of the best that we see in the county, maybe we need to look at those areas carefully. So it helps us prioritize a bit. At least keeps it visible to us. Because so often we talk in broad strokes about the county and areas, and it's very hard to tie things down sometimes.
that's all I have. Any questions from
Are
anybody?
you gonna have another subcommittee meeting like you did last Tuesday?
Yes, I'd like to go ahead and have set one up. Thank y'all.